can dive into Lego sets, as you can see in the title to our listeners. The title says Investing in Lego Sets. Danny, yes, you and I have talked a lot off mic about it. I've been hesitant to really open up about this on the podcast, maybe because it's such a speculative topic and I see it getting a lot of steam on YouTube. There are a lot of YouTubers who are promoting this idea of invest in Lego sets and resell Lego sets and blah, blah, blah. And the place is getting flooded. And I'm cautious about it because I do think a lot of people are like have dollar signs in their eyes and they think this is some cool thing because a lot of people love Lego sets and they want to jump in and cash in on some of those profits without really realizing what they're getting into. And so to our listeners, well, first of all, welcome back. And if you are a regular listener, then today's topic is probably going to look rather niche and interesting to you. You may own Lego sets yourself. Maybe you have some. Maybe your kids do. Maybe you have friends who like Legos. But maybe you're a new listener as well. Maybe this title caught your attention since this is a very niche topic. And those who are in that sphere of buying and reselling Lego sets tend to really seek out a lot of content in this area to learn more about it. They tend to be very passionate about it. So if you are new to the channel, welcome. We are a personal finance and financial planning podcast. Today, we want to talk about this topic. So Danny, I wanted to plant a flag right away to clarify the title, Investing in Lego Sets. I am very hesitant to even call it investing. I think...
Agreed.
I really do think that's a dangerous way to view it. I don't think it's on the same playing field as bona fide investments that you can do in the financial markets. I think buying Lego sets with the hopes of reselling them for a profit is highly speculative, and it does come with a lot of risks. And what we call it, I don't know. When you look for it online, when you try to Google it or research articles on it or listen to YouTubers, a lot of people call it Lego investing. Some will call it Lego reselling, that type of thing. I am very much on the side of reselling and speculation and not investing.
I would say Lego reselling makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to, like you said, fight back against Lego investing and say that it's much more so collectible speculation.
100%. Yes, I absolutely agree. So another flag to plant. Today's episode is meant to be educational and fun and just share some insight into this unique area where some people like to buy and sell Lego sets. This is not advice for anyone to buy or sell Lego sets. It's risky, it's speculative. So if you are a listener who has been intrigued by this topic and you're absolutely insisting you want to do it, or you already are doing it, well, I'm hoping that today's episode will leave you with some wisdom and some food for thought to just have a more cautious approach and be smart with your money. And I just really hope that people don't walk away thinking that they could just easily go buy Lego sets and sell them for profit, because it could really have detrimental effects on your personal finances. And so we'll go through all kinds of things today, Danny. I wanted high level. I wanted to go over with you and talk about what is Lego reselling. How do you do it? Is it profitable? And what are the risks? And what are the pros? And then kind of what are my thoughts in general in 2024 and beyond? Where do I see this sphere, this area going, if you will, Lego reselling?
Sure. So, yeah, we'll touch on some of your past experience in prior years and how it's gone for you.
Sure.
And then what you think it means in the rest of this year and beyond.
Yeah. That sounds great. To our listeners, if you Google buying and selling Lego sets for profit or Lego investing or whatever tagline you use, you actually might come across, a bunch of articles. I've seen articles from Bloomberg and Forbes. I think there were some from like 2019. I was trying to Google a few before we did the show today, Danny, just to refresh my memory, where I've seen some media and things in the press. It's getting popular on YouTube. I know there were I think there were Russian economists who did this study that like from 1987 to 2015 or something like that, buying and holding Lego sets brand new and sealed in box and then reselling them later outperformed the S&P 500, right? So you hear all these claims, and when you look at some of these things, you can cherry pick any data you want over any period you want and look for
any period of time.
Right, and you can look for something that makes something look really attractive and good. And yes, is it possible to earn a profit from selling Lego sets? Yes, I have examples. I've literally been doing it on eBay, but it's not all roses and sunshine that people tend to paint it to be. There are a lot of Lego YouTubers, Some that I've watched were like Wolf of Bricks or Brick Bucks or Jake's Bricks. There's a lot online, and
Wolf of
yeah, it's
Bricks.
hilarious, and I actually like a lot of their content.
Nice.
But like, they are also contributing to this topic, and so it's getting more and more people interested, and so the space is getting more and more flooded, and also you have to be careful of what a lot of people say. You have to remember that there's a lot at play here, and so there's one end of the spectrum which paints a very rosy picture that this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. Do people still say that? The coolest thing since sliced bread? I don't know.
Not in any generation younger than our
Okay,
parents, I
all
think.
right. I am 35, all right. I'm not a boomer. I'm not in my 60s, but that is a phrase I somehow picked up in my repertoire. I'm going to continue to use it. That's what I got to say about that. But then there are also Lego criticizers, right? I remember seeing a clip on Dave Ramsey's show. And Dave Ramsey wasn't actually on this clip. It was two other people. And I remember they were talking about some news article or something. And they were like, Lego sets outperformed the SP 500, blah, 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 like great returns. And this guy was talking like on camera about like sets he's bought and selling them for these crazy profits. And the people on Dave Ramsey's show were like, the one guy was like, yeah, they're called kidults. Like instead of adults, they're kids, but they're kidults. And the other guy was like, yeah, it sounds more like stupid, like buying and selling Legos.
Nice.
And
yes, classic.
I know. I got it.
You know what? I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
Here. I'm going to say, everyone listening, as long as you have your responsibilities in order, don't ever stop being a kid.
Thank you.
Don't lose like your joy for life and having fun, and just as long as you are responsible and you're getting done what you need to get done, enjoy life. Otherwise, what are we all doing?
I am so appreciative of you saying that.
Also, for anyone on Ramsey Solutions, I'm pretty sure that unless it's real estate or mutual funds, they're gonna put it down.
Perhaps. I will say that if any of our listeners have seen that YouTube clip on Ramsey, even as someone myself who has plenty of hesitation and reservations about reselling Legos, like I'm going to go through all kinds of cons and risks today. I'll be the first one in line to speak about the negative aspects. Even I, when watching that video, was like, man, they are not being intellectually honest or fair about this topic, or exploring it enough to really, realize that what areas of buying and reselling Legos are actually credible and what areas are not. That, for what it's worth, I do think that video has some criticism that's valid against it. But
okay. And in relation to the criticizers, you had listed a couple of other topics or areas, and I wasn't sure, if you wanted to bring those up or what you meant with those.
No, the person criticizing it on that video clip had brought it like, oh yeah, honey, like he's talking about like you're talking to your wife like, I need to buy this gun or this guitar or this car. It's an investment, I swear. Like, and he was like, he was making a false analogy, in my opinion. Guns, guitars, and collectible cars are very different things than Lego sets, and there's a whole different economy surrounding them. And it's just, in my opinion, it wasn't a fair. It was a red herring, in my opinion. So
okay, understood.
But back to your point that you mentioned really quick about the don't stop being a kid. When I first met my wife, she told me a quote, and it was one of the quotes that made me just absolutely fall in love with her. It's my favorite quote too. People don't stop playing because they get older. People get older because they stop playing. I absolutely love that quote. So anyway, wanted to throw that out there. It's a good one. But anyway, among all this hype, the people who paint it as roses and sunshine and the people who say it's ludicrous and you're an idiot, somewhere in the middle lies the truth. And that's what I want to try to get at today, is where does selling Lego sets really stand amongst all this? So first, Danny, let's talk about what is Lego reselling to our listeners. What is it and how do you do it? The easiest way I can describe it is Lego has to constantly release new sets to keep their customer base interested, right? They can't just release sets and leave them on shelves forever because eventually people stop buying it. So they release new sets. They're always innovating and releasing new sets. And once sets are on the shelf for a while, usually 1 to 4 years, although it can totally vary depending on the Lego theme. Once they're on store shelves for a while, Lego then retires those sets and they stop producing them.
Sure. Yeah, you can't keep factories tooled for every single set that you've ever designed.
Right. So in many ways, you could say it's manufactured scarcity, right? eventually a certain Lego set will stop being produced. And so the supply is no longer being added to, and then supply diminishes, but perhaps demand keeps strong because there are a lot of really cool Lego sets that retire that a lot of people say, gosh, darn, I really wish I had bought that because it's such an awesome set and I love this theme or I love this particular area that I like to collect in with Legos, and they missed out on it.
Sure.
And
Maybe that buyer was not a fan of a certain IP at that point,
yeah,
and then they discovered a new show, movie, theme, book, whatever it is that inspired those sets, and now they want those sets.
precisely. I mean, they're exactly. That's a great example of how that desire for that set could manifest, right? And so that set is no longer in production, and then the inventory dries up on all the shelves, so you can no longer get it at your Amazon or your Target, your Walmart, or anywhere, right? And then once it's all dried up, all that's left are people who had bought some of those sets and kept them sealed as part of their inventory, or as I like to say, as part of their Brickfolio. And then they resell those sets on the aftermarket after they've retired. And because some of the demand might still be there, they can sell those sets for a premium, for a profit. That's basically what it is. You know, it's buying a set, waiting for it to retire, waiting for inventory to dry up elsewhere where nobody can buy it at retail price anymore, and then selling that set for a profit. Now, seems simple on the surface, right? But actually doing it successfully is a bit more challenging.
And also, you would say this is different than scalpers who are trying to buy the entire inventory the moment that it's available and using bots to front run all normal consumers.
Yes, that's incredibly frustrating. Like, I mean, scalpers will use bots and they'll literally buy up hundreds or sometimes even thousands of these things. And I don't know if they do this with Legos. I don't think there are really many scalpers in Legos. I think that's more like the best example I've seen is like when a new video game console releases and like they just immediately they go on pre-order and some smart scalpers with their algorithms buy up hundreds of the inventory and then they're all out of stock and you can't get one yourself. I suppose they could exist in Legos, but a lot of people who are buying Lego sets, they're actually going to stores, right? They're going to Target and Walmart or Amazon and buying those sets, or Lego.com or Barnes and Noble, wherever they shop from. And they're actually ordering those sets or they're going into the brick and mortar store and buying them physically. Yep. I don't do this. There are some YouTubers who resell Lego sets and they are like mega big. Like they're buying, hundreds of sets, right? I buy like a few sets. Like this all started because I would find a set that I like and I realized, oh, when these things retire, they tend to appreciate in value. So when I initially started getting into buying and selling Lego sets, I would buy two of a set that I want. I would keep one. I would keep the other one sealed. I'd wait for it to retire. It would appreciate in value, and then I would sell it. And some of those profits would go to offset the cost of what I paid for the original set that I wanted to keep for myself. That's initially how I got into it. And then I just started slowly expanding. Maybe I'd buy 3 sets or 4 sets or 5 sets of one that I think will appreciate in value. I don't think I've ever bought more than 5 or 6 sets of any set personally, because I don't do this a lot. It's definitely, I do resell them, right? I have a little side hustle eBay business.
It's more of a profitable hobby.
Yeah.
It's not your primary source of income, your primary business.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I just went through what Lego reselling is. And again, it seems simple on the surface, and it is. Like the concept is quite simple, but actually doing it successfully is kind of difficult. Like, how do you do it, right? Well, first, you have to be thinking about like, when is a set going to retire, right? Lego does not tell you when they're going to stop producing a set. Occasionally on their website, there's a section under where you can look under like themes and whatnot on their drop-down menu, and it'll say last chance to buy or something like that. If there's a set on there, it's usually an indicator that they're about to retire it at some point, maybe this year. But other than that, they do not divulge that information. They don't tell you. So you have to rely on third-party sources. And these third-party sources, while historically are pretty reliable, they're not perfect, right? They don't always get it right. And so, you may think a set's going to retire, so you buy a few sets, and then next thing you know, it doesn't retire, and Lego extends its shelf life. And then you're sitting there on inventory like, well, great, now I bought these sets, and they're not appreciating in value because they're not retired yet, and now I have to sit on them and wait until they actually retire. So
Okay.
that's difficult. So part of it is like knowing how to exercise caution and wisdom when making a judgment call on what set you think is going to retire. That's something to be mindful of. You have to buy at the best price you can, right? Like even if you buy a set at retail price and it retires, even if it doesn't drop in value after it retires and you just sell it again at retail price, you're still going to be at a loss, right? Because you have to pay fees on your selling platform like eBay or Amazon. You have to pay for shipping costs, things like that. So you want to build as much cushion into your potential profit as possible. And you do that by shopping smartly, by paying the lowest dollar amount you possibly can on any Lego set. For example, Danny, I have a Barnes and Noble membership that I pay for. It's an annual fee. I forget what the membership's called. It's like $50 a year, $60 a year. They just rolled it out last year, I think. And
Okay.
you automatically get 10% off all Lego set purchases as a member. But then I
Interesting.
also buy discounted Barnes and Noble gift cards, right? Like there are certain places where you can buy Barnes and Noble gift cards at 10% off. And so you do that plus your 10% off from your membership, and next thing you know, you can get Lego sets for 20% off. Sometimes Amazon has Lego sets on sale for 25, 30% off, sometimes 40% off. Target does that too. Walmart does that too. You have to this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of research. You
Definitely.
have to have, when I'm thinking about sets I want to buy because I think they might do well post retirement, I'm building a list. I'm watching them. I'm tracking their prices in all of these different areas. I have alerts ready to go if I see a price drop, that type of thing. Because I have, from firsthand experience, I've bought Lego sets that either appreciated very little in value or none at all, and I ended up just barely breaking even, and in some cases even losing money. And buying at the best discount you can find really helps protect you a little bit in some of those areas. So like you have to be doing set research. You have to be thinking about what sets you think will do well post retirement. That in of itself is totally highly speculative. Like you have no idea, right? Certain themes might perform better than others, but if everyone else thinks the same thing and everyone's buying up that same theme, then the aftermarket's going to be flooded. And so you really have to be thinking about these things and doing some research into the sets. When I'm trying to think of a set I like, honestly, the first thing I ask myself is this a set that I actually want? Because if it doesn't pan out well, at least I will have a set to keep myself that I like, which is why I say this is more of a hobby for me than a means to gain profit. It's a hobby
Definitely.
first and then a profit second in my eyes. But there are certain themes that are very oversaturated with a lot of sets, and there are certain themes that are very undersaturated and not a lot of sets. You may think that the undersaturated theme is the way to go, but if there's not enough organic interest in it post retirement, then it's not necessarily going to perform well. So you have to be thinking about that too. I won't go into you know how I into the nitty gritty of how I choose sets. I think there's a lot of good advice on YouTube about that type of thing, like ways to be looking. But again, there is the issue, the conundrum, if you will. Going to YouTube, everyone else is also doing that, and so if they're seeing the same thing promoted, then that could lead a lot of people to buy the same sets, if you will. So just be
Okay.
mindful of that.
I wonder if those people buying multiple sets also leads to a delay in the set actually being retired if it's, selling that well.
It's hard to say. There are certain sets. Let me give you an example of one of my losers.
Okay.
So there was a set that I thought was going to retire, and it was Lego set 21318, the Treehouse. This thing has been out forever. I don't even know how many years now, 5, maybe more. It's getting old, and people thought it was going to retire. I had bought a couple of them. I think I bought 2, and I want one for myself, so I just have one in inventory to sell later. And it just hasn't retired, and it keeps getting pushed out. It's a super popular set. A lot of people have it, and eventually it will retire. But even then, my waiting period after it retires for it to appreciate in value is probably going to be really, really long because it's been out for so long and so many people have bought it. There are likely so many people sitting on these kits, these Lego sets in their inventory, just waiting to liquidate them, and the aftermarket will probably be totally over flooded with them, is my guess. You never know. It's just
Okay.
that's one of the risks. I know we're
Yeah. So that's an example of one of the so far it's kind of been a loser for you.
yeah.
What are some of your winners? What sets? What was the theme? What kind of return did you see on them?
Yeah, so I put a couple here just to give you an example, and there's a couple things we can really unpack from these sets that I listed out. So I kind of chose a variety of dollar amounts to paint a picture and also raise a few good points as part of this exercise. So, all right, I'll blast
Okay.
them really quick. Lego set 71371. It was a Super Mario Fire Power Up Pack. I bought it for $8. It retailed for $10, so I got a 20% discount. I sold it on eBay for $50, which is a 525% return gross sale. But after my eBay fees and after my shipping costs, I netted $33, which is still a 312% return, if you will. And my holding period for that really was just a little over a year, right? It was like a year and, I don't know, some months. So not a long holding period for a 312% return. However, the net dollar amount I actually walked away with was $25, right? My net sale was 33. I paid 8 for it. I walked away with $25. And if I'm being honest, I probably spent, I mean, all things considered, I probably spent 30 to 60 minutes taking pictures of it, making the listing on eBay, writing up the description and describing the condition, typing in the shipping info, the weight and the size of the package, and responding to an inquiry if somebody had a question, boxing it up and actually driving to the post office and mailing it out. One thing, this is a good segue into the topic of time, Danny. A lot of like even YouTubers that I've watched in this space will talk about if you know what you're doing, then like it doesn't take much time. You just like get a whole system and process in place. That is true. I totally agree. But I've also been selling on eBay for like 12 years, albeit casually, right? I'm not a hardcore eBay seller. I sell pretty casually, but I've been doing it enough to have developed a good methodology and a good system and process. I'm pretty quick. I know how to box things up carefully and also quickly and efficiently. I know how to get listings on really fast and that type of thing. But I really do think people, if they're being totally honest and they were to add up every single micro moment that they are distracted about the sale in any way of all the examples I just gave you, I think people underestimate how much time they actually spend when they are managing a sale from absolute start to absolute finish. And so when I'm seeing
Okay.
that
Sure.
$25, I'm asking myself, how much of an hourly rate did I actually earn, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's coming to mind. Did I earn $25 an
Okay.
hour? Did I earn a little bit more? I don't know. So
I mean, it seems like if you were doing this full time, that works out to, the return of a decently healthy full time
yeah,
job.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm making $25 an hour, that could be a great hourly rate of return. Hourly rate for somebody who has a job, depending on the situation. But that's an example like a really cheap Lego set that was only $10 retail. I got it for 8, sold it for 50. But that was the absolute net result. The next one is Lego 71369, which is also a Super Mario theme, which was Bowser's Castle. And I bought that for $80. It retailed for 100. I got it 20% off. Sold it for 160, so 100% return on investment for a gross sale. But after my eBay fees and my shipping costs, that's a bigger box, so the shipping costs are a bit more expensive.
Sure.
I netted $120. So that was a 50% return on investment for my initial purchase price. So I walked away with $40 in my pocket. Again,
Your cost of goods sold was rather hefty with that
correct. Although my hourly rate did improve with that one a little bit. And the holding
Mhm.
period was roughly the same, like just a little bit over a year or so. Next set was the Lego Speed Champions 76895 Ferrari F8. When my wife and I were in Alaska, this set had already been retired like for several months. So I couldn't believe it when we walked into a Walmart and there was a whole shelf of them of this set that had long been retired. And when I looked on eBay, I saw it selling for, in the 30s or so, $30 or so. And this used to retail for 16. And they were on discount on clearance. And maybe it's just because we were in Alaska at the time and there's just lower population and maybe there's a weird, geographic arbitrage.
Sure, there's
play.
a little bit of arbitrage
Yeah.
there, with the fact that
Yeah.
they hadn't updated their inventory.
Perhaps. There were 6 of them. So I just took my arms and scooped all 6 into the bin. I bought 6 of them for $12 and I sold all of them for around
$12
each. Yeah, $12 each.
Okay.
I sold each of them for about $39-$40 or so, around 39, I think. So if I bought it for 12, sold it for 39, roughly 200% return on investment. But after eBay fees and shipping charges, I netted $22 or 175% return on investment. And the net dollar amount I pocketed was $12 per set. So not a very good hourly return now, right? When we're starting to get into that range. Big margin, really nice margin for those sets, but they're lower dollar amount, right? And so like if I wanted to go that route, imagine the volume you would have to sell of these things. Like I don't have a
Absolutely.
huge Amazon warehouse with workers that can just
Yep.
immediately manage all these sales and sell them like crazy. I'm an individual guy just doing a side hustle. And quite frankly, that's what 99.99% of people even interested in this or doing it are likely in the same category as
Okay.
me, right?
So far, it very much seems like the people who are doing this as a hobby or a side hustle, it's very beneficial to focus on those bigger ticket items in terms of, your return on time.
Okay, great. Yes, return on time. Yes, I agree with that. I don't know per se if like the bigger ticket items, like it's harder for people to stomach dropping
There's more
more
risk
cat.
there too.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Because you can buy several low dollar sets across a few different themes and kind of quote unquote diversify your brickfolio, if you will. But if you're dropping more cash on a heavier set, more expensive set,
All right, Chris. I'm gonna need to tell me what the beta on your Brickfolio
the
is.
yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to get a financial analyst in here to measure some of that for us. I couldn't even begin to tell you. But don't even tempt me to do a second follow up episode where we
Yeah.
get really nerdy.
Moving
Yeah,
on.
our listeners would kill us if we did that. So, but moving on. Yeah. So here's another set. This one was probably my favorite one, and I only bought two of them, regrettably. It was Lego set 75810, the Lego Stranger Things, the Upside Down, right?
Ah, okay.
So
Yep.
this retailed for $200. I'd gotten mine at a 10% discount, so I paid $180 for it, both of them, and I sold them for $450 on eBay. So 180 purchase price, 450 sale price, 150% return on investment, gross sale. But after eBay fees and shipping costs, this was a big Lego box, so it was a heavier shipping cost. I netted $360, which is a true 100% return on investment, 180 to 360. So I actually walked
Nice.
away with 180 in my pocket per Lego set. That was nice. That was a very motivating sale that kind of opened my eyes to some of the potential in this area of like, okay, if you can be prudent about this and manage your risk accordingly, and you could pick a few good winners like that, I could see where some of this interest comes from. I could see the profits here. That was a really nice profit. It took about an hour of my time to manage the sale from start to finish. That's a nice hourly rate to earn, if you will. So I liked it. Now, not every set's going to be like that though, right? Like in fact, most of my sets aren't. And so you just have to be mindful that a lot of people will talk about their winners, but they won't talk about all of the kind of mediocres, the mediocre
Yep.
sales or even the losers. My favorite. So, I should have planted this flag at the beginning of the episode before we get too far. This is all assuming that you are buying brand new sealed Lego sets, right? These can't be used or opened or anything like that. That's
Or banged up or damaged in any
You can
way.
still sell them damaged, but you get a big damage to your Lego box, and that's going to decrease the amount you can sell it for. So,
Yep.
but I do have one example in here that I thought was hilarious, and it was actually the one that kind of got me into this, and that was Lego set 10040. This was the Black Seas Barracuda. This was released in 2002, and it's one of the original pirate ships. It's super cool, even by today's standards. I still think it's an awesome set. I had gotten this set when I was in high school, and it retailed for $90. I remember when I got it. It was from one of my birthdays. And I built it. I kept that thing built and put a plastic bag around it, and it sat on the top shelf in my closet at my parents' home, and it sat there for 20 years, or not quite, almost 20 years. I still had, because I sold it, I still had the original box and the instructions. The original box was in
Okay.
decent shape. It was a little bit dinged up, being that it was, over 20 years old by the time I sold it.
Just sitting in storage. Yep.
Sitting in my parents' house. But I remember one day I was just like, gosh, I remember I had that set at my parents, and I was looking up online, what does this thing sell for? brand new and sealed, if I had kept that thing sealed, I probably could get around 1,000 to 1,500 today is my guess. I don't know. Last I checked some of the prices, I'd need to double check on that. But one source online I saw had it valued over $1,000. Mine, of course, was open and used, pre-owned, so I had to sell it accordingly. Pre-owned sets almost never go up in value, but with this one in particular, since it's so old and it had been retired for decades and it's a classic, of course it retained some value. So I ended up selling it for $450 on eBay. So with a purchase price of 90 and a sale price of 450, that was a almost 400% return on investment roughly. After shipping costs and fees, I netted 365, so 305% return on investment. And the dollars I walked away in my pocket were 275.
Okay.
And
That's respectable.
yeah, now that is assuming that I paid the $90. I actually got it for free because it was a birthday gift. So actually my profit was better, but I used the $90 as my cost basis in this example.
Sure.
And I did an annualized return on investment for the 20-year time horizon. It annualized 8.37%. So
Okay. So that's just shy of the expected market average.
yeah, roughly. For a pre-owned set, open, used, not bad. Although this is still a highly speculative collectible, right? So the fact that it could even do that, I'll take it, right? I can't complain. Those are some examples of when it can be profitable, right? Of course, I showed you an example of when you can lose money too. The first two I went through, Danny, Lego Mario, right? I thought the Lego Mario theme would do well. And so I actually bought quite a few Lego Mario sets. And the Bowser's Castle did well. The Fire Power-Up Pack did well. But I had a handful of Lego Mario sets that I actually ended up having a loss, a small loss on after I sold it, all things considered, right? Like they didn't appreciate in value as much as I thought, or some of them just stayed flat in price or even went down, which was wild. I've very rarely seen that before in a set that's post-retirement. And after paying for shipping costs and eBay fees, I actually walked away with a little bit of a loss on a handful of sets. So that was interesting. That just goes to show that there's no theme out there that is going to be a guaranteed winner. You just really don't know.
Okay, so one of the primary risks there is that you could pick a set that's essentially a losing set, a losing theme that doesn't appreciate.
Yeah, and some of the things that can drive a set's value could be hype on I don't know what you call it in the media. Like maybe there's a movie coming out, like Stranger Things, for example, right? I had sold that set right at the tail end of season 4 when it was ending. Like season 4 had just finished, this I think it was, and then the set was retiring. There's a lot of hype on it, so people were paying a premium for that. Some sets have exclusive minifigures that you can only get in that set, and if that set retires, there's a whole minifigure post market, right? That people buy minifigures on the aftermarket, and if you have exclusive minifigures that can also support the price appreciation factor of that set, it's just hard to know though. And as I'm about to go into what are some of the risks and cons, right? Well, you just mentioned it, Danny. You might pick a losing set, but the Lego might also re-release a set. That's another risk, right? So a set might retire and it might appreciate in value. You're holding onto it in your inventory. And then lo and behold, Lego re-releases the set or an almost identical one. And then the price of the set you're holding in your inventory plummets because why would anyone pay a premium for your set when they could just go buy a new one they re-released?
So, I don't want to dive too deep into this aspect.
Sure.
But when they re-release it, if it's not identical, that still drops the price because I know with other things such as collectible cards, if you have a first edition and they re-release cards, that is not typically going to devalue those first edition cards that can't be reprinted.
I don't see that same kind of organic collectability in the Lego side.
Okay.
Now, if it's a similar set, I do mean identical, right? Like there was a really cool Lego set, Lego Ideas 92177 Ship in a Bottle. Really cool set. It finally just retired not long ago. But Lego had initially released that set and then they were going to retire it, but it was so popular that they ended up re-releasing it and it was absolutely identical. It is literally the same set. All they did was they changed the number. So the previous one wasn't 92177, it was something else. All they did was slap a new 5 numbers on it and they kept the exact same set and they re-released it. So they can do that from time to time. Another one they did recently was they retired the Disney Castle, but then they re-released a new Disney Castle. I think it's slightly different, but it's super similar. I actually don't know what happened to the old Disney
Got
castle,
you.
whether it
Okay.
dropped in value or not. But that is a risk you have to be mindful of. It's not common, I will say. It's not common for Lego to re-release sets, but it is still a risk that you have to be mindful of. The other one I mentioned earlier in the episode was Lego might not retire a set when you think it's going to retire. That's a big one, and so you end up being forced into a longer holding period before you can sell your set for profit on the aftermarket. The other one too is this is a risk that I just don't see enough people talking about, especially on YouTube. Lego is an illiquid asset and it's speculative. Can it retain some value and potentially appreciate? Yes, but it is speculative and it's illiquid. You can't like just overnight liquidate your set for cash. The only way you could feasibly do that um, would be to sell it way below what you should be selling it at to just get a fire sale as fast as possible because you're in a desperate situation, right? And I'm going to get to more of that later, Danny. I have a few thoughts I want to share on that aspect as well. But it is illiquid. That is a big risk a lot of people do not appreciate enough about Lego sets. And then another one, the last one I had listed down was you had actually mentioned it earlier, Danny. You could, if you damage your Lego box, right, that can destroy the value. Storage space is an issue, right? There was a point where I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting stressed out by some of the space this is taking up. I had to get creative with how to store it carefully and safely.
Yeah. You don't want to be, filling your house and making it difficult to clean and live in your area.
Right.
So there's, that storage space that you need, whether it's in your house or in maybe a garage or an attic or an actual storage space. And then there's also, you are taking on inventory risk essentially,
Yeah.
right? You have these physical products that you have to keep protected from fire, moisture, possibly things like rodent damage and other issues, right? All of these different things when you start to take on inventory in a business aspect where you have to worry about the risk of that inventory being destroyed in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. To that same point, the act of managing inventory also increases the risk that you will damage your own Lego boxes, right? It's like feedback loop. I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally dropped a box and it dinged the corner as it landed on the ground from a 5-foot drop onto hardwood. And it's really frustrating. And so that's something you do have to be mindful of. The last risk I put on here was time, Danny. Again, I just want to re-emphasize this point. I know I kind of hammered it pretty hard earlier when I talked about truly tracking how much time you spend from the absolute beginning to the absolute end of the sale and how I think people really do underestimate that. But what about all the time I spend researching Lego sets, obsessing about themes and trying to figure out what sets I actually think are going to retire, thinking about what sets I think will actually appreciate in value post-retirement, thinking about how to cleverly store my Lego sets in the time I have to spend moving Lego sets to free up more storage space or to shift things around. These are all miscellaneous things that truly take up time and they just do not get appreciated enough how much of an impact
And
it
mental
has.
bandwidth.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we've talked through a bunch of the different risks and some of the cons, that you could possibly encounter. What would you say are the pros, excluding what we've already discussed?
Yeah, I mean, excluding what we've discussed about, potentially being a profitable side hobby. The pros to me, right? This is just my personal answer, and I can't answer for our listeners or people who are actually doing this, but I have a lot of fun doing it. Like, I understand that there are risks involved and that I could lose money on sets. I have done relatively well, and so I don't stress too much about it. I actually do have a lot of fun with it. I have fun with some of my buyers online who send me messages. Like, I got a message of somebody who bought it was the Bowser Castle set I sold, and
All
they
right.
sent me a really nice message about how their son had been dying to get this set and they missed out on it when it retired and they weren't able to get it, and they were so appreciative of it, and they were so happy that their son had just got it. It was like they had just seen the Super Mario Brothers movie too, and so their son was super excited to have the Bowser Castle set. That was really cool. And like, I'm a huge Lego nerd and I love Lego myself. I build so many sets, and being able to run a side business, side hustle that helps me pay for my hobby that I enjoy, that is so much fun. And if I can be relatively profitable, that to me is the biggest pro out of all of this. It's kind of like the blend of the hobby and the enjoyment factor together while making a little extra cash. And there's a little bit of
Definitely.
nostalgia there too. So I do see it as like a slight diversification play, right? You
Okay.
could view Legos as a quote unquote asset, although I'm not as reserved as I am about using the term investment. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like it does hold some value.
In terms of it diversifying, let's dive into that and say it's a diversification if you're going to view it as, something to buy into and hold on for
Right.
value. It's a diversification in the fact that it has very little, if any, correlation to market movements.
Yeah, I'm sure there is some correlation, right? Like when people are under hard financial times, people are just broad economically speaking, if you will, people are less likely to spend money on luxury goods. And I would say Lego falls into that category. It's not an essential expense. But yes, I do think that it does have that benefit of perhaps not being quite as correlated to other things. But that's not the focus of it for me. But I would mention that as a minor pro as well. So nostalgia, things like that. I dropped the word kids in here, Danny, because as you know, and our listeners who heard the past couple episodes know, just had my first child, my son, and not sure if he's gonna be into Lego sets or not, but something tells me he will. A lot of kids love Lego sets. I mean, it's okay if he's not, but this could be a cool way to, I don't know, enjoy the hobby with him and maybe slowly introduce him to this idea of like what it's like to run a side business and teach like really basic personal
Mm-hmm.
finance. And here's what it's like to spend
Yep.
money on this Lego set. And here's one for you. And here's one we hold on to. And maybe it goes up in value and we sell it. And look, you just made a profit. And now you can save some of that profit and use some of it as well to maybe buy a different Lego set that you want. I think I like the idea of like tying something tangible like that. That's maybe a hobby that my kid might enjoy to teach important personal finance lessons as well. Um,
Yep. I know that in a previous episode, you had mentioned
yeah,
how you wanted to possibly introduce him early to the concept of how a business is run so that he has that
yeah,
understanding earlier in life than, most people.
right. And actually, if I may make a quick call out here, I think it was the second episode we did, Danny. You are a business. I think that was the second episode.
That is
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
So, to our listeners, if you have not listened to that episode, it's our second episode. So we were getting under our feet, if you will, with the podcast at that time. But I still really love that episode. I recommend you go listen to it because I do think it's one of the most profound, I don't know what you call it, financial philosophical concepts or something that I've personally thought of. I don't care if my child, Danny, has no interest in running a business. I really don't. I want them to pursue their interests where they lie. But as I made as you and I talked about in that episode, we made the case that we are all business owners. We all are business owners. We are business owners of the you business. And there are so many analogies to be drawn between how businesses run their finances and they need to be mindful of their shareholders versus how family households run their finances and how they have to be mindful to their shareholders being themselves, their future selves, their spouse, their children, things like that. So that philosophy kind of bleeds into this area for me as well with my child, hoping that I teach some of those lessons that even if they don't start a
Absolutely.
business, they recognize in themselves that they themselves are a business as well, and they can
Okay.
map that over into their personal finances. So a little bit of a tangent there, but anyway,
Yeah, that makes sense.
um,
So we've discussed how it's gone for you so far, what you kind of view Legos and Lego reselling as, and your experience with it.
mhm.
What are your thoughts on it in 2024 and moving forward?
Yeah. So I'll be totally honest. I'm no longer intentionally buying Lego sets for my inventory as like a way to build inventory and sell them for profit on eBay. If there is a set I really want and I think it will do well, I might buy two of them, kind of like I used to, like one for myself and then one to sell for profit to hopefully pay for the one I wanted to keep myself. There was one set I did that for recently, and I just, other than that, I haven't been really buying many Lego sets other than ones for myself. I still buy Lego sets for myself because I love building Lego. My thoughts on 2024 and beyond. I think the space is getting crowded. I really do. When I started doing it a few years ago, it was already starting to get a little crowded when I came in, but compared to today, it's night and day difference, right? I mean, I do think the YouTubers out there who promote the Lego investing, which I don't like that word, but who promote that, they are making this more and more mainstream. And so more and more people are trying to get into this hobby, this reselling hobby or business, if you will, and it's getting flooded. And so not only that, but Lego is ramping up their set releases, their production. Like I'm just shocked at how many new sets they're putting out. It's on one hand, it's amazing because I love Lego, right? And I love to see these new sets coming to the shelves, and great for the business, right? Lego is probably killing it. I think they are one of the most profitable toy companies in the world and one of the biggest in the world. Um,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, and so it's incredible, but with more and more options coming out by Lego, it also clutters up the speculation in the aftermarket because when there were fewer sets out that Lego was producing, there were fewer options for people to find alternatives to, right? Oh gosh, I really missed out on that medieval castle I wanted, and it's now retired. But well, look over here. So look over here though. There's a new medieval set coming out. It's not the castle, but it's gonna satisfy that itch that I'm looking for. That's what I see. I'm starting to see now with like all kinds of new sets coming out, and like themes are really getting flooded with new sets. And so I think that's just making the Lego reselling area more and more difficult to participate in. Lego is very well aware of Lego resellers. Lego resellers are very profitable to Lego because they buy a lot of sets and they're a very passionate crowd. And quite frankly, a lot of Lego resellers are truly passionate about Lego. Like they get into it because they love Lego themselves. And it's like that blend of hobby and enjoyment, like I alluded to earlier. But with a lot of, in 2024 and beyond, with things getting flooded, there are a lot of newbies coming into the space because of it being hyped up from social media, YouTube, the like.
Sure. Yeah,
And
becoming more mainstream.
yeah, and so I can see it on eBay, Danny. Like there are so many sets that have retired that are selling at retail price or even below, and I am utterly shocked. That very rarely used to be the case some years ago, right? There are now people getting in who are jumping in and getting in, over their head into something they don't fully understand. They're buying sets thinking they're going to be able to sell them easily for profit because it's just easy money, right? Then they realize, oh no, this is illiquid. I don't have my personal finances in order. I'm hitting hard times. I need to sell this right now. Oh my God, I'm so stressed. I need the money. I need the cash. And so I'm just seeing set after set after set being sold online for really low price. And then it turns into a frenzy, right? Somebody else wants to go list their set. And so they sort by new because they're selling a new and sealed set. They sort the order from lowest price to highest. They see what the lowest price is and they put their listing on and they just lower it by 5 cents to make theirs show up on top. And rinse repeat, and that goes over and over and over again. And so a lot of people who have more experience in this space are just sitting there with their sets also posted on eBay, but they already have a price on it that has baked in a premium that they need to have a profit that they require. And they're just sitting there like, gosh, I'm just waiting and waiting for all of these newbies to like dry up out of this space until finally the aftermarket is not flooded and prices will start to go up and then I can finally sell my set at the price I want to sell it at. And what does that mean?
And there's that liquidity risk and that holding time and that you mentioned before. The longer you have to hold these, let's say, I mean, you had that used ship set for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And yes, your overall, your gross return looked incredible, but when you average it out for the time adjusted return, the amount of time that it was held before being sold,
Yep.
you were just above 8% on an annualized return. So the longer you hold them, the higher those sales prices need to be in order to, win out over any other maybe standard investment.
Right. And it's opportunity cost too, Danny. Like if your money is tied up in Lego sets, but there are opportunities elsewhere. Maybe it's in the investment market. Maybe it's in real estate. Maybe it's in your high yield savings account, right? That's paying, 4.5% or 5%, right? If your money's tied up in a flooded aftermarket and your price is not appreciating, your money's just kind of sitting there in dead water, right? And that's something that you have to be mindful of if you are playing or dabbling in this space. It really is. I'm seeing an increase in holding time. That's the biggest thing I'm seeing. It's like it used to be that a set would retire and you could sell it 6 to 12 months after retirement. Like once inventory's dried up, wait 6 to 12 months after that's dried up. It's no longer on Target shelves or Walmart shelves, whatnot. Then you could sell it 6 to 12 months after that for a really nice profit. Now I'm seeing that 6 to 12 months turn into 12 to 24 months, and in some cases even longer. That's where I see things going. Now, maybe there will be a reversion. I don't know. Like it might be the case that people start to realize, wow, this is getting overflooded, and a lot of people who were getting in and when they shouldn't be and didn't understand what they were doing, they might eventually leave, and so maybe things will improve. I don't know, but for now, I've really pulled back on this area on my eBay hobby side hustle business. And yeah, I said this earlier, but I've actually seen the sets go down in value after retirement. That almost used to never be the case some years ago. Like when a set retired, once inventory dried up, worst case scenario, it would be at retail price. They would stay out there for a while and then maybe slightly appreciate very slowly. Now I'm actually seeing sets drop in value post-retirement, which I think is relatively speaking, a more recent phenomenon in this space. Now, I'm not like a super long term. Like there are Lego resellers who've been doing it for 10 years plus, and so they have a way more historical vantage point. I guess they've seen more in terms of how this area has evolved and changed over the years than I have. I still consider myself very new to the space and more amateur, but yeah, I say these things in this episode because I do think there are valuable lessons that people can get from some of the things we're talking about.
So I want to go from there and the thoughts on the future and move to some of the closing thoughts, specifically regarding hype and bad advice.
Yeah, I mean some closing thoughts on this area, especially like if you're a listener and you've heard of this Lego reselling thing and you're intrigued, or you have Lego sets yourself, or you want to dabble. I really hope that you're doing this while exercising great caution. And yes, the hype and the bad advice, Danny. The first thing I want you to be, our listeners, is just really beware of the hype out there. Like everyone can't be doing it, right? It's a fallacy. Like if it's like everybody who paints it like it's roses and sunshine paints it in a picture that like anyone can do this. It's easy. You just buy Lego sets, wait for them to retire, and sell them for profit. That should be immediately raising red flags to you. It does not pass the sniff test, right? You'll often hear people, well, if you know what you're doing, you should easily be able to do this. That's just not true. Like not everyone can do this. This reselling market thrives and is profitable when fewer people are doing it, when fewer people know about it. But we're in 2024 and we're in a global economy and we have social media and people have information at their fingertips at the blink of an eye, right? And so more and more people are doing this. You should absolutely expect that the outlook in this area is going to get less and less rosy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, competition will be increased.
Absolutely. I mean, beware of bad advice, right? I have heard YouTubers who have made claims like you'll earn more with this than you do in the stupid markets. I've heard YouTubers who have recommend, I don't even invest. I don't even do any of that. I just this is all I do because this is the best asset class. And I've even heard people talk about taking out like loads of debt to like 0% interest to just like load up on Lego sets, which is wild. Like you should not do that. That's obviously bad advice. But
absolutely,
but it's so easy to get caught in the fervor of it, right? The fear of missing out. Like that's what draws people in. I've heard some people on YouTube talk about like, forget your 401k. Like this is so much better than, any of that. I've even heard shady tax advice with like, you could take deductions and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it's just really be wary of that stuff. There should be so many red flags going off when you hear people talk about that. You should not be viewing this as an alternative to your 401k or as an alternative to your investments. You should really be viewing
nor as a get rich quick
exactly.
scheme.
You should be viewing this as speculative, as a speculative toy that you could potentially sell for more. And I really do think for most average people who are looking at this should be fun and a hobby, and it should make up a tiny, tiny piece of their finances. It should have little to no impact on their finances. If you're doing this and it's impacting your ability to save or pay off debts or contribute to your 401k, you should not be doing this. Like this is not for you. This should 100% be viewed as speculation, and it should be done for fun and potential profits, and it should not take the place of your other fundamental finances. Speaking of which, Danny, I mean, you and I hammer this point so often in so many episodes, but I really do not think people should even remotely be considering any of this if they do not have rock solid personal finances, if they don't have an emergency fund that's established and funded, if they have credit card debt, if their finances aren't stable. Like
eliminate all of your consumer debt
seriously
before you consider anything that's speculative, no matter what the arena is.
Yeah. I mean, think about the people I just talked about, Danny, the ones who realize, oh, this is illiquid and I'm in financial stress and now I need to sell this at a loss, right? I don't use this word very often, but I guarantee you they very likely do not have their personal finances, their fundamental finances taken care of. They likely don't have an adequate emergency fund. They likely have other debts that are hanging over their head. They likely have unstable income or unstable finances. It is those things that when you hit hard times, those things, if they are not adequately prepared in advance, they are going to put the stress and pressure on you like you would not believe. Don't put yourself in that position. That's all I'm going to say on that. And don't get carried away with this. Don't kid yourself. Don't overreach and overextend. Be wary of the hype and the bad advice, and just take some of the things we said in this episode to heart. Anyway, Danny, thanks for joining me on this Lego journey.
Yeah, thank you.
And to our listeners, thanks for coming along on this journey as well. Hopefully you found this interesting. Let us know if there's anything we didn't cover that you're interested in. Have a great rest of the week.